Cavalier marching band has changed a lot since I first got involved with it back in 2005. When I first got there, it was very haphazard in a lot of ways. Everything was functioning, but even as a first year, not really knowing what's happening behind the scenes because I'm not really in it, I realized quickly that things, well, the band felt like it was flying by the seat of its pants a lot of times. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just things felt a little uncoordinated, a little underthought, underplanned, and it kind of translated to being a little bit more like a well-run cafe in some ways. And not knowing any difference, I thought it was fine. But as I started engaging with the CMB in different fashions, I ended up not only being a drill instructor and section leader, but I also ended up working on uniform staff for 2.5 of the years. I ended up joining halfway through my second year just by virtue of volunteering, and ended up helping Rodney Jones and Laura Noonan run it for the next 2 years. And that was a fantastic experience, but just being a part of that and doing anything from loading the trucks to loading instruments to coordinating the band fraternity and getting them involved, realizing how much planning was required and how much hadn't been done in the early days. I'm just hoping that everybody, by the grace of God and by the goodness in their heart, would just jump at the chance to help out and take sousaphones off the truck. That kind of stuff maybe happened in the beginning because everybody was very excited, it was new, everyone knew that they needed to step up, but as soon as people realized that wasn't always going to be that way and we started planning for it, I realized it started to become much better, much more well-oiled machine, and it was something that really facilitated a speedier, more reliable situation. And one thing I will say though is the band is never without its hiccups. I can't tell you a single game day where there wasn't something wrong. There was something wrong with the Malakats, or it's 2 minutes before the halftime show and they haven't even been unloaded from the truck or something like that. The podiums had not been set up properly, or the musical guest didn't have his microphone, or something like that was always going awry. And certainly working as a grad assistant, that all became very clear. That was a big issue. And one of the things that I respected about having Tiffany Hornberger around in the early days is that a lot of that went unnoticed because she took on the burden herself. Many people stepped up in the band. Dave Knight did a lot of work with it especially, but you never really noticed that there were all these issues that needed to be taken care of until after she had left, and other people ended up filling her roles or trying to fill her roles. And it didn't go as well as planned. Even when I was working as a graduate assistant, Kirby was helping me out, so was Rodney. It was a very chaotic experience, and I think a lot of the kinks have been ironed out. So I really appreciate that. But at the same time, I've seen the band change in a way that makes it almost like it's a business and less like a family. I think that's one of the things that it's good for the long-term success of the organization, but it's just something that's very different for me. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, it's just a very different approach. One of the things I appreciated about the early days of the marching band was that everybody was willing to just jump up and volunteer. Say it's a Saturday and it's a late game, and half of the band's gone home, the other half will stay and help unload the trucks or load the hat boxes into garment beds or something like that. And that doesn't really happen anymore because everybody has their own domains. The only people who even bother doing that are uniform staff, equipment crew, and there's not a lot of people jumping up to volunteer. So it's become a little more role-based, a little bit less volunteer-based. The CMV means a lot to me. I guess is the simple answer. The CMV really has sort of defined who I am today in a lot of ways. Not only did it define the people I interact with and the level of commitment I gave, or the level of commitment to an activity that I invested in the undergraduate years of my life, but it's defined things way beyond that. I'm still very active, trying to be more active in Kentucky Alumni Association and the band itself. just finding opportunities to give back and planning my fall and sometimes spring weekend schedule around football games, half for the football, but half to go see the marching band or to go meet Mr. Cook's son, or to say hello to Dr. Peace, things of that nature. Those are still very central to my life. It's not something I see changing anytime in the future. And furthermore, it's a great way not only to meet the new people, but to reconnect with all the people that I worked with, all the people that I performed with, and all the people that were a big driving, shaping force in my life. I think in a lot of ways, the connections that I made through the marching band have also defined elements of my career. For instance, David Knight is a good example. The amount of work that he did with the Environmental Sciences Organization, and the fact that I joined that the first week of school, and the fact that he and I ended up becoming close, that led to my work with the marching band as a graduate assistant. That led to some of the connections that I made within the Environmental Sciences Department, and eventually led to my master's program, where I was able to find funding at the University of Virginia. All of that arising because the faculty sponsor of the Environmental Sciences Organization gave me a recommendation because I was running that organization as well. And it's one of those things that the CNB has changed a lot for me, but almost indirectly, rather than directly. I got a good workout. I guess like a lot of people, going from high school into college is a big transition, and it's an opportunity to reinvent yourself in a lot of ways. And everybody has this image of who you were in high school, and then when you go to college, you can be whatever you want. You can be the jock, you can be the nerd if you want to be. Sometimes you can't always change that, but one of the things that was really big for me is I was a bit of a bigger kid in high school, so I ended up losing a lot of weight from high school into college, and I ended up loving life. I ended up being a lot more athletic, and the marching band was a huge part of that. I lost something like 10 or 12 pounds, not intentionally, by the way. I lost about 10 or 12 pounds during band camp my first year just because it was record heat, and we were sweating like crazy out on that field, and we were still at the English Inn, so we could wake up at 6:30, 7 o'clock and get brunch, or we could sleep in and say screw it and then just wait till lunch. That's what I did. Ended up probably should have eaten. So I got very hungry, but we had these late night meals that were fantastic. Never had so much McDonald's in my life, but CMB kind of gave me an opportunity to be a better me in a lot of ways. It was kind of the gateway, maybe the ignition to the kind of change that I wanted to see in myself personally. It gave me a lot of opportunities to take on and try different leadership roles, to find new ways to engage. And one of the good things is that I've taken a lot of those skills and applied them to volunteer organizations that I work with now, or that I intend to work with. Learning where to find opportunities, how to make a better connection with people. The connections that I make at work or at networking events, things of that nature, are completely fostered by all the skills that I've inadvertently developed while I was with the CMB, having to work with so many very interesting, very complex personalities, my own included. It was fantastic. And I guess overall, the CMB has meant a lot of family to me. It's created a lot of lasting connections. Gave me an opportunity to be a part of the music again. It's one of the reasons I love playing music. I'm actually in the process of trying to get involved with another wind ensemble in the DC metro area, and a lot of that just came from my continuing engagement with CMB, with the wind ensemble that Dr. Peace conducts, with the concert band that Mr. Cook conducts. And it really just kind of set the tone for what I expect out of myself moving forward. So being a part of the organization was one of the greatest choices I've ever made.